I'd like to thank the chairman and the ranking member for putting this bill to improve how we provide affordable housing, affordable rental housing to extremely low-income families to help home buyers purchase a condo. This is great. I appreciate it. And the goal of today's hearing is to examine how the federal government can better provide housing assistance in the 21st century. In light of the fact that incomes remain too low for many workers to afford market rate housing, we need to invest more federal funds to address the rental housing crisis. While I support many provisions in the bill considered today, the real answer is to, in my opinion, quadruple our investments in rental housing for extremely low-income families. I've asked for Chart 1 to be shown on the screen. Mr. Fisher, this chart is from the Center for Budget and Policy Priorities. Can you explain what it says about our rental housing crisis?
Sure. And I'll say first, I think it's really important to move forward with the targeted changes in this bill, which I think are well designed and would deliver real benefits to low-income people. But it's true that the challenges go well beyond what this bill can address. This chart shows the blue line there is the number of families with what HUD calls worst-case housing needs, which means they're very low-income families who pay more than half of their income for housing or live in severely substandard housing, and that's gone way up. It's up more than 30% since before the recession. The red line is the number of families with rental assistance, which has pretty much been stagnant. So this shows that the number of families struggling to afford housing has gone way up, but the programs that are best positioned to address that need have pretty much been treading water.
Thanks a lot. I'd like to point out that nationwide we have more than 1.3 million homeless children. In my own district, city of Minneapolis, which is a pretty well-to-do town, we got about 4,000 kids every day going to school from a shelter. Anyway, Mr. Fisher, let me show you chart 2. We spend more than $270 billion a year on housing, $270 billion in housing in America. But this chart shows that the bulk of the investment, was for better off families. Can you explain the financial benefits families receive and who receives the most generous housing assistance? Because some people would have us believe that it's the very poor who get all the housing assistance. Is that right?
When you include tax expenditures along with direct rental subsidies, the bulk, close to 3/4 of federal housing expenditures go towards home ownership, and the biggest share of that is for deductions like the property tax deduction, especially the mortgage interest deduction that go predominantly to higher income families. And that's what this chart here shows. About 3/4 of the benefits from those deductions go to families with incomes above $100,000 and more than a third go to families with incomes above $200,000.
Okay, so this is 3. And when we think of who receives housing benefits, we don't realize that high-income families receive 4 times more housing benefits than do low-income families. You know, what should we do to right-size housing assistance? And I know you're familiar with my bill, the Common Sense Housing Investment Act. I'd welcome your reflections on it and your reflections on this chart.
I think it's what this chart shows is cause for concern. I mean, low-income people are much more likely than higher-income people to deal with problems like eviction and homelessness, which are bad for everyone, but especially bad for children, as you mentioned. And part of what drives that is that federal housing resources are targeted heavily on higher income families who could afford housing without help. I think that the issues that your bill raises, like looking at reforms to the mortgage interest deduction that would keep a large mortgage interest benefit in place, but reduce it some for higher income households and expand it for middle income folks and generate some savings that could be used for other things, I think is a sensible approach.
Thanks a lot. Looks like I'm running out of time. Let me see if I can ask Mr. Polychron a question. Mr. Polychron, thank you for being here today. Allow me to ask you about marketing services agreements and control business arrangements. I read the Realtor's recent report, Definitive Analysis of Negative Game Changers Emerging in Real Estate. It's called the Danger Report. It warns that many realtors are most likely in violation of TILA-RESPA rules regarding illegal kickbacks. When the title insurance agency is referred business through an affiliated business arrangement where does the cost of the referral get absorbed? Who pays for it?
Well, the danger report, as you may, and thank you for the question, sir, but the danger report was something for us to look forward that might happen. It isn't something that's actually happening. It's something that we're trying to prevent from happening. And marketing service agreements are certainly something that not only the DOJ looks at a lot, but we have to be careful on how those are initiated. I can tell you that our association is constantly monitoring that to make sure that when we do any type of marketing service, that it's done properly.
Thank you, and I yield back the time that I don't have.